I can't remember if it was seeing you on Meat Eater or listening to you on Rogan, but I was immediately hooked. And I remember like sending either whatever it was, I sent it to my dad and my brother. And we made it a goal to go to Dai Due, like
Oh,
as soon as
cool.
we could.
Hmm.
I have since been, we haven't gone together, but I went for the first time when I moved to Austin a couple months ago. And I got to tell you, it lives up to the hype. I'm
Great.
sure you get that all the time, but it's an incredible place.
Yeah, I mean, I love to hear that. You know, it's a day by day thing. You know, it's like cooking food is it's just a constant, almost not a struggle, but you know, to maintain that, and the more notoriety you have, kind of the more that burden is. But we have a pretty incredible staff there, and I think more than anything, that's what's enabled us to stay good and relevant, is that we focus as much on people at the restaurant, the work there,
Yeah.
as the food, and that's really enabled us to kind of maintain standards, so that people that hear about it and get excited walk out of there feeling like, oh, that was great. That's what I wanted it to be.
That's interesting. I've never thought about the notoriety part because if I don't have expectations of a restaurant, it's easier for me to be pleased, right? But if I hear everybody and their mom talking about how great this restaurant is, and then you go in, you have these expectations, so it probably is a little added like layer of pressure to be able to meet those. Does that make sense?
Certainly, and it can be distracting in a way too, because really our prime focus as a restaurant is to cook great food and provide, substantive and warm and sincere hospitality. And it can be a bit of a distraction when you get like some notoriety, because, or if you allow that. And I think that there's some trick to it, is also just stay as true to your initial ideals as possible.
Yeah. That's the restaurant industry. There's some statistic where it's like, what is it, 90% of restaurants don't make it past 10 year or 5 years or something. I mean, the restaurant industry is incredibly hard to be in
It
for a long
is.
time, correct?
Yeah. We're probably 2 weeks out from our 10-year anniversary right now as we
Nice.
speak.
That's and we were talking about before we got in here. Did you mention you said that when y'all were planning Dai Due, it was like right in this room right over here?
Yeah, we our accountant, he's just this kind of multifaceted, really wonderful person, and he's much more than an accountant or bookkeeper, and he's kind of a business consultant and just like a proponent ally. And he allowed us to use his offices to do our initial round of hiring interviews, because we didn't obviously have a place.
Yeah.
We didn't have the structure was still being built. And he let us do that, and it was literally like about 10 feet from where we're sitting, where we did that first round of interviews. And I think it's also notable that there's two people that we hired in that room 10 years ago that still work for us.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's very cool.
yeah.
What's like the hardest part, would you say? Because you'll find Tyro means novice or beginner.
Mm-hmm.
It stems from young soldier in Latin. That's pretty much the ethos of the podcast, is to embrace the nature of being a novice and try to learn from people like yourself. I am extraordinarily that. I'm a novice in the restaurant industry. I have no idea about any of it. What's like the hardest part of maintaining that like culture that you said, like two people being at a restaurant for 10 years is pretty impressive. I would imagine that's not the norm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be a bit of a long answer, but it's trying to find your way with employees, and how do you inspire, and how do you make it equitable. And I really think that that's very important. And I have this kind of like this two-way street model, and that I think about, as an employer, we owe our employees something, and you have to determine what that is. It might just be a paycheck, which is fine. And then they owe us something in return, which is, in the case of the two people that have been with us for so long, they're both servers. And so they provide incredibly good and warm hospitality towards anybody that comes in that restaurant, which is exactly what we want. And they've done it just beautifully for a decade now. But we owe them something in return. And it's like, I always like try to think, it's like, what do we owe that employee? And if it's a cook that's really hungry to learn, it's like, I owe him or her everything that I know, and we don't hold back. We're very forthcoming with information and learning, and try not to be so, I don't know, maybe egotistical or afraid of like, oh, they're going to one day usurp,
Yeah.
this knowledge. It's like, well, that's what you want,
Yeah.
really. I think, especially with cooks, is I want them to go someday and start their own thing and then look back or tell other people, is like, I learned so much there, and and I loved it, and it was great. And so I think, just like a legacy of learning and giving back is how it's foundational with that. And then also an equitable environment for everybody, and where they are able to live in Austin, they can afford to
Yeah.
live here. And we do our very, very best as a very small business with super tight margins, especially the type of food we serve, how we source.
Mm-hmm.
We take a lot of burden on with that. Like, we pay more for a lot of ingredients than, I'm not going to say than we should, but than what our customers know about. We make a lot of
Then you
sacrifices.
could, I'm sure. You could
Oh, we
certainly.
could cut a lot of corners.
Yeah.
We could cut a ton of them, but we don't. And that we owe our customers that, even if they don't understand it, even if they don't know it. But as far as the people that are working there, it's like, I think you determine what is their motivation, why are they there, and meet that or exceed it, and then try to pay them as well as you can. And once we figured out the math behind that, about how our pricing structure and everything, to really keep the business afloat, if not profitable, not always, most of the time probably not, sometimes yes. How do we transition, or how do we translate those profits back to our staff? And once we kind of figured that out, our turnover was just, it's almost none. And then when somebody does leave, it's because they're moving to another city, they got married, or some great reason.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. We, to see an ex-employee come in and eat, because,
That's
and
cool.
like, hey, we miss you guys. I'm like, we miss you too. That's great. And so I think that, like, you're in the restaurant industry, you're nothing unless you've got a great staff. And so if you're trying to cut corners just so you don't have to maintain a great staff, you're never going to achieve that consistency and that hospitality that's going to take to become successful in the first place.
Yeah. I feel like that's true of any team, but particularly in a restaurant where you mentioned the margins are so slim. That's one thing I do know about the restaurant industry, is it's a pretty slim, like, pickings. It's not like you're sitting on 40, 50, 60% margins like some other these
No.
e-commerce businesses and things of that sort. That seems like a very fine line to navigate. And I'm curious. So I'm 25. I look at everything through the lens of myself, 25-year-old young man, and like the visions and aspirations that I have. Is this like a long time coming for you to be like creating an environment like that, to be a restaurant owner? Is that something you've always wanted to do, or is that sort of just late onset?
No, I mean, I've worked in restaurants since I was about 15. And, once you start working in the kitchen, there's this thing, that the old, when I get my own place, when I have my own place, and I do have my own place now. And so I get to look back on that. I get to look back on other kitchens that I worked in and other restaurants, and that weren't functioning on these standards. They were, the owners were rich, and the servers were rich, and the kitchen, we're just back there, working 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, cutting
Yeah.
ourselves and burning and going through all that. And it's just a real struggle. And there's still a great disparity between the front of the house and the back of the house. Like, the cooks and the servers, they make different money.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to right that as much as we can within the current cultural standards of tipping and, wage equity and things like that, which is a very complex issue. But in retrospect, yes, it's something that I always wanted. And, to your point, I mean, it's great to be asked that, because, sometimes it's great. I can actually sit back and look and be like, hey, yeah, I did achieve that goal. I am a restaurant owner. And I think that I'm the type of restaurant owner that I wanted to be, but I didn't know what that would look like. But I'm very happy with the model we've created. Yes.
Yeah, you're like molding. Well, actually, that's a question that just came to my mind. You mentioned that you wanted to be, or you hope to be, the place where chefs or whoever works for you comes back 10 years down the line. They're like, hey, we started our own place, and I remember when I worked here, that it was so instrumental in my development. Do you have a place like that you worked at that you remember being super instrumental? Maybe multiple.
Yeah, definitely. I worked at an Italian restaurant here in town that's, they've been around since, probably the mid 90s, Vespaio, and they're kind of a foundational restaurant here in Austin. They don't get the love that they deserve because they're not the shiny new place. And they kind of run things quietly.
Where is it in town?
It's on South Congress.
Okay, cool.
It's like right in the middle of all that, but they're very
around.
subtle about it. And I mean, just the fact that they've been open for so long says a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And their chef, who's now a chef owner, his name's Ryan Sampson, and he's been there forever. I started working there, I think, in 2000, 2001. Around then, I put in about 5 years there, and working with Ryan was pretty amazing. He's a great leader. Shakes everybody's hand when they walk in the door, looks them in the eye and says, good morning, hello, how are you? And was just a very by example leader, not to mention a phenomenally good cook and also the fastest damn cook I've ever seen. I mean,
what do you mean by that? Just like putting stuff together? Or how are you fast
on the line during service? I mean, that's the hard part. Like kind of the rubber hits the road part is like, in a busy restaurant, how fast can you get out perfect food? And that guy he's like lightning. I've
Really?
never seen anything like it. And he's a machine, and he's just organizing. You have to have a very clean station. You have to have a very organized brain, and he's very good at that. It would be something that we call them civilians would be very lucky to see, just like to watch that happen. Like when 7 orders roll in the span of 20, 30 seconds, and someone has to cook 15 different items, maybe with a modification here or there, and they're cooking fresh pasta, which requires like down to the second timing, and they're doing that. And there's this dialogue and this communication that's happening. There's like an entire language there where, on that line, we weren't allowed to say anything besides yes or no. I mean, if it got a little slow, there was definitely some banter, but really when it was really busy, your communications were supposed to be very limited, very, very terse, an economy of dialogue.
Sure.
And so it's music, it's really cool to hear. And I'm not trying to romanticize it too much, because at the end of the day, we're I've said this before, we're like plumbers, there's nothing different about cooking than other trades. And, Bourdain really kind of blew that up, and, the whole rock star image. And I think that's been very detrimental to our trade also. But Ryan was just one of these people that really did it. He had a garden out behind the restaurant. Cool. When I was working there, we started sourcing meats locally. Lots of vegetables.
Way before it was cool.
And didn't ever talk about it.
Yeah.
It was just the thing. It's just what we did.
It wasn't
we're
like
bringing in
point. That's a good point.
Little 3/4 pound chickens. We're bringing in whole flounder and soft shell crabs. We've got this little garden out back, bringing in whole pigs and whole lambs and whole legs of veal and things like that. That were just really, really cool at the time, and very formative, and at a really good time in the cultural dynamic of when food was changing, for that to happen and to be on board in such a great place where you're also free to experiment a lot and bring these things in. We had a huge specials menu every day.
Is that good? Like, is that fun for chefs? Like, is that a good thing?
It can be, depending on the day, depending on how stressed out you are. It's just like, oh, hey, you need to come up with 12 things today, and you're, let's face it, you're hungover or whatever. It's just like, there's a lot. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. Yeah. But the thing is like, what's not going to change is that you're going to have 200 people walk through those doors that night, and they need to have this great meal. And our personally instilled standards were very high because we were inspired by product and leadership.
That's fascinating. I'm just fascinated by the idea of like mentorship, because I played baseball in college, and to me, those people in my life thus far have really been coaches. I've had some coaches that I don't look up to at all, and who, in fact, I like try to emulate a lot of stuff like the opposite of.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some coaches that I respect and love and like admire dearly. So I'm just always fascinated by like you're here at this cool culmination point. You've achieved this goal. It's cool to hear you have a guy that like comes to your mind immediately, and you can even pick out like how many things did you just pick out 5 or 6 things that he did that
Mm-hmm.
you've learned. You mentioned the Anthony Bourdain thing, because I think one time you said the plumber thing, but I heard you say people think like chefs are artists now or something, and you said we're more like craftsmen.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that what Bourdain did with like the travel rock star style lifestyle, why do you think that was detrimental to cooking or to your occupation?
I think it added some undue idolatry of the craft, of how cool chefs are, and how much creativity is involved. And so I think for somebody that was about to enter into it or was considering entering into the trade, that it painted a picture that is unrealistic. Like, it's going to be a party after, you're going to work for 12, 14 hours, and then you're going to go and party, and all the resultant things from said party. You're going to get a little bit of sleep. You're going to get up the next morning, but whatever, you're going to go and do it again. And that's a lifestyle that you can do for a couple years, but also that's going to be to the detriment of your food. And it painted this, it's just this rock starization of it. Whereas it's more about discipline and caring. And other things that come with that, I think, are some very negative interactions within the kitchen. And I came up in a lot of kitchens where it was constant negative reinforcement. You were in this constant like taunting with other cooks. I mean, there's a lot of shit talking. There's a lot of negativity coming down from a chef or an owner. There's a lot of distrust between the front of the house and the back of the house and the dish pit. It's just like there's all these little teams that form up, and that's the old way of doing that, and it's a very negative situation. And I don't think that you can cook good food surrounded by negativity. I think that you need a lot of positivity and no yelling and no throwing things and no tantrums. And I think one of the key things when we were designing Dai Due is I wanted sunlight. I wanted a ton of light in there. I didn't want the prep to happen in this dark basement away from
like
sunlight.
LED lit, like in a
whereas
dungeon.
everyone else got to experience this breezy, beautiful dining room where you feel good, but where the things are being made is in this closet. And so we moved the prep area to the front of the restaurant. That's the entire prep area. And it's like a stage, and it's totally for the view of anybody that walks in there. And there's another part of that is that we have nothing to hide.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're not tucking something in the back so you don't see us opening a package or opening a can of something. I want you to be able to look at that and see that this is where everything happens. And sometimes somebody will drop something, break something. Like mishaps are going to happen, but it's just like a realistic portrait of what's happening there in this bright, sunny environment where everybody's around one table. The whole team is around one table. And so I think that Bourdain, I was watching Bourdain videos yesterday. I adore him. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. I think, if anything, that maybe his message was misinterpreted, and he didn't mean to. I mean, obviously, he was a very tortured person.
Certainly.
And I think that he realized it too. I mean, his first book was very much glamorized this rock starish thing, of this hard partying chef that's still a total badass and so forth. But as he traveled and saw like these amazing cooks in Vietnam and Africa and the Middle East and wherever he went, there's just like all these people making beautiful food, and they're not behaving like that.
Yeah.
That's not required. In fact, they would probably be taken aback by, a 14-hour day followed by a bunch of tequila.
Yeah.
Like that's not going to work for my little taco stand. Like I have to be up at 3 a.m.
Yeah, that's interesting because that was on the back half. Like, didn't he start? He started as what you mentioned, like sort of the high octane chef, and then he started traveling, correct? And that's when he sort of got the notoriety. That's interesting to think about.
Yeah, I think, and so I mean the effect of that was profound on the industry, and you saw it immediately in the kitchen, whether it was people new to the industry coming in and having these expectations, and whether or not they survived in the industry, dependent on their discipline and their ability to navigate that. But I think it changed it in this country, if not most parts of the world, and in your finer dining situations, it kind of indelibly, it's really changed those things. And so, I mean, for good and bad, like I said, I adore him. I adore his writing, and I still watch his shows, especially of parts of the world that I'm interested in his take. But I think we're in a very thriving food city right now, and so we're still feeling those effects, and probably will forever.
Yeah.
Of how restaurants function, how chefs are perceived, myself included. It's not to say that it's part of it. And it's like, it's very appealing to the ego too.
Yeah.
I'm a chef, and people are like, ooh, I'm like, right, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, but the people that are really doing the work is the actual chef at the restaurant, Janie Ramirez, who's the executive chef, and all the people that are working the line, and the prep cooks and the pastry cooks and the dishwashers, who I'm very proud have been there for years because they're very well paid and very well treated.
And that's all stuff that I like. Me being a civilian, like I would never see that or know that at all. Because like you said, you could cut corners. That's definitely a corner that you could, in fact, cut.
You could, but it's not smart.
Yeah.
You definitely, that's the person that needs to be the happiest.
Yeah, but it's like the link in the chain that is the furthest away from my experience. And I'm so glad you brought up the setup of Dai Due, because now that you mentioned that, like you walk in, it's literally the first thing you see. It's wide open. You've got the butcher rail that you see animals getting butchered. You see everything getting done. And the natural light thing is interesting. I've never thought about that, but I love natural light. I always hated classrooms when I was younger that didn't have like windows and things of that sort. And I can imagine being some prep cook working for some asshole, like big deal chef in some closet, really doing the base foundational stuff of where everything else is done, getting no love, getting yelled at in a freaking broom closet with no light. That would suck. Yeah. That's not a very enjoyable experience.
It's a great place to be, is that prep table. It just feels good. It's breezy, it's airy. It looks good. There's glass jars of cool stuff everywhere. Any direction you look, there's skulls and, and then you can look over and there's a dining room, hopefully full of very happy people. And so it's a connection. I mean, we wanted it to be, when you walk in the door, you see that prep area, and that's where we prepare the food. And the next thing you see as you progress to the dining room is a big fire, and that's where we cook it. And that should answer every question you have about our concept right there.
Yeah. That's simple.
We're not hiding anything. These are our ingredients. Out of necessity, we have to store a lot of ingredients out there in between that prep area and the dining room, so you can walk by and touch them. There's garlic right now. There's going to be garlic and onions and maybe some tomatoes and peaches ripening on racks, because we don't want to refrigerate that. But we don't have a space to put that other than right there. Now, granted, it serves as the best decor possible.
Certainly. But
it's also a very honest conversation that we're not having out loud with our customers as they walk through the restaurant, and they get it. It's a very easy equation to see. And I've probably told this story before on a podcast many times, but it was one of my favorite moments ever. at the restaurant as I was standing in the prep area, and this older gentleman walked up. He had the big cowboy hat on and everything. He had taken it off at the table, like you should.
A real Texan.
But he had put it back on as he was leaving, and I looked over at him, and he was just looking at me, and it was one of those feelings that I had that he wanted to say something to me. So I just made myself closer, and he looked at me right in the eye, and he said, "I know what you're doing here." And I was just like, it floored me because it wasn't an accusation, and it was so real because he was just conveying, "I know what you're doing here," and he did. He was saying, "This is how my parents and their parents functioned food wise," and that's all he said. And I was just like, "Thank you," and he, left after that. And I was like, that was the coolest moment because he knew that's all that he needed to say to me about it. And he nailed it. And I was like, and it wasn't like a young writer came in and just like really studied the concept and was like, "Oh, I really get it now." It's like he got it on an intrinsic and inherent level.
Have you ever seen him since?
No.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be cool if he came in.
If he's hearing a podcast and be like, "That's the guy that said that."
Maybe he's listening right now.
Yeah, right.
No, but that's still what do you think that you were doing, or if you could extrapolate on like what you think that he meant by that? Like, what do you think that you were doing that he knew?
We were treating food simply and only sourcing from our neighbors and within the region, which is this is my interpretation. Not as a restaurant concept, but it's just a way of being and a way of serving food. And so I think it harkens back to a more traditional approach to food, which is exactly the way that I would rather describe it. We're not doing anything new here, at all. Like, I mean, if you want to get
one of the most antiquated things probably in history.
The concept of eating the food that is available to you is in the top 2 oldest concepts,
Yeah.
And so, and I think that's what he was saying. Because I mean, our food, sometimes it's perceived as fancy, which I'm like, we literally put pieces of meat on plates with salt on it and put that out in the dining room. Yeah. It's like, I don't know of another quote unquote fine dining fancy restaurant that does that. It's like, I mean, some of it can be incredibly simple because that's all we need to do to it. And my feeling was what he was saying is like, these are the old ways,
Yeah.
And I recognize that. Or maybe he ate the biscuit and was like, "Oh, this is what I remember biscuits tasting like because they were made with stone ground flour and lard and butter instead of bromated whatever and margarine," So on some level or on many levels, he got it.
That's so cool. That's another thing I'm fascinated by is like the moments, like the amount of interactions you've had at Dai Due and probably at any restaurant in your life, number in the thousands, if not more. And you remember that one like it's yesterday. That's so cool to me.
It was very
he had no idea too. Like maybe he listens to podcasts. He sounds like an older gentleman, maybe not. But like it's just cool that was one thing that like that's probably a massive green light in your life to like, you know what, we're doing something cool and right here.
It's the slow way. It's like you don't run a restaurant like that and for accolades and Michelin stars and things like that. It took a long, long time. And I will say that we're 10 years in and we still get press and we still make the lists and people still come in. And I think it's still an exciting restaurant. But we haven't changed much.
Yeah.
We've gotten better. Janie's gotten better. She's made the restaurant better because she's the most talented cook I've ever known. And she just makes delicious food. I don't know what kind of deal she made with the devil, but it's like, it's profound. And so, she's figured it out, and is just making it better and better. But conceptually, nothing's changed. We're still just functioning on the same principles.
Well, you said something super important right there. I think you said very simple. Like you're treating the food simply. You're dealing with the food simply. In my mind, that's like what comes back to the craftsman like the plumber thing. It's not like you're doing 48 different things to one piece of meat so that it comes out this exact way. Which, to your point, is not even remotely. That's 48 steps removed from what we used to do, what we've done for however many thousands and thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
It's like that's how food's been eaten. That's how food, I don't know if you say ought to be eaten or ought to be cooked, but it's what we've done. And I think it's nice to have that like return almost.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely, it's warranted, or it's welcomed. Like I enjoyed that return instead of going to some like restaurant where you can, like I said, get like a 17-course meal with like, here's an example. The most expensive restaurant I've ever been to in my life was in Hong Kong with my family. And it was literally one of my least favorite meals I've ever had because it was like, I'm from Georgia, grew up eating big barbecue meals and stuff like that. I like eating with my hands. I don't like the super fine stuff as much. And it was like these one bite things where it was like 29 different ingredients. And I'm not saying that's bad or whatever, but for me personally, I'm much more inclined for the Dai Due type experience that's more simple, authentic, and raw, if that makes sense. Yeah,
I'm with you on that. But I mean, that said, some people take great pleasure in eating at a restaurant like that, and they can savor it. And I appreciate that too. Personally, if you were to say, let's go to that restaurant, I'd be like, tell you what, let's take all the money that we would spend at that restaurant and let's go eat on the street in Hong Kong for a week.
Yep.
And hit up every crazy ass little place and eat all the dumplings and all the stuff that we can't identify instead.
Well, that's actually, it's funny you say that. And I'll make this brief, but me and my dad were there for a week or so. And I remember that meal vividly. It was an incredibly, it was an incredible ambiance. I mean, it was, like I said, the most expensive restaurant I've ever been to. So it was super nice. Service was incredible. I just remember the food being like, I'm like, this was not good. I would rather eat somewhere else. We went to an authentic, like, this is another thing I tell people. You've had Americanized Chinese food, and then you have real Chinese food, and it's pretty different, to say the least. And we went to this hole in the wall somewhere on, like, up the hill in Hong Kong, and it was one of my favorite meals I've ever had. And it was like this dark, dingy, very intimate, very cheap Chinese restaurant, and that's much more my style. It sounds like you're the same.
Yeah, I mean, there's hundreds of years of tradition and pride, culture, history, resources, piled into that kitchen, and it's derived on what they have rather than what they want. Like a place that's going to charge that kind of money can put anything they want on the menu, any kind of caviar, any kind of truffle, wine from around the world, gold, literally. You're going to eat gold, which is a flex.
Yeah, 100%. I had gold-plated cheese, and it was like, it sounds so dumb that I even just said that out loud. It was like, what does it even mean? I'd rather have a Meal Guy burger.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally conspicuous consumption.
Yeah, it's not I don't say that to be a flex. I really don't. I'm like,
no. I'm not saying that it's a flex on their part.
Yeah,
like to be like, no, you want to eat gold because you're of this is income level, basically. Yeah. But that said, I mean, there's still that level, and there's some chefs out there that have tasting menus like that are insanely talented. And I look at food that they create, and I'm like, they're smarter than me. Like, they're just smarter than me, and it's just like, that's inspiring, but, personally, and it's okay. And I've come to terms with it. It's just like, you know what? I mean, and the best meal I've had in recent months was a fish taco on the street in Ensenada, Mexico,
Wow.
And it was just like, yeah, this is it.
Really?
This is the best fish taco I might ever have. And it was, it was beautiful.
Can I ask what about the taco? I'm curious. You probably had a lot of tacos.
Thanks.
No.
It was perfect. It was just perfect. And when you walk up there, you have a choice of fish or shrimp. And
2 choices?
And they're both fried. And so it's just a strip of fish. You don't know what the fish is, but I guarantee you that fish was very fresh, and that was caught, a few blocks, or came into port a few blocks away. They didn't mention that, though. That's cool. It didn't. There's nothing on the menu. Well, there was no menu first off, and there
A
would
and
be
B.
no little thing at the bottom like, we use local and organic whenever possible. It's like there's nothing like, it's just like fish or shrimp. It's like quieres pescado o camarón. And that's it. Those are your choices, and they put that on a tortilla, and the tortilla was beautiful. Like, it was perfect. They didn't make the tortilla, but they sure as hell sourced that tortilla from somebody that makes tortillas very well, and they probably hold that tortilla to an incredibly high standard and consistency. Then you order it, and probably 4 seconds later, it's in your hand because the lady's like, "What do you want?" And I'm like, 2 and 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, here. And then there's just bowls of condiments. And then everybody that's eating there is just kind of milling around, sitting on whatever they can, standing, doing whatever. And it's just, but it's contextual, and it's a real experience as well, because you're sitting here and you're in the right place just from the crowd, and that everybody's there, and that how as a culture, how they admire the food too. They respect it, and they value it. They value a good fish taco enough to know that they have to come here rather than that other place.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that place is fine, but really, if you want the best one, you're going to come here. And I was told that, and because I am obviously not from there. And this guy, he looked over at me, and he's like, he basically was like, you did the right thing coming here rather than there. And I was just like, well, I can tell from the crowd, and then all your condiments are just laid out in bowls, and then you're up to craft it the rest of the way, which also speaks a lot to the ego of the people preparing the food. So if you're not in complete control of your diner's experience, like in a restaurant in the US, a lot of times, then the chef, how can you get those accolades? How can you feed your own ego? If all you're doing is just dropping a piece of fried fish onto a tortilla and handing it over, and then you're letting this guy over here, who may or may not know what they're doing, put a choice of 15 different condiments on top. What if they screwed up? They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care. They're there to feed you, but still they're able to feed you this incredible meal, but where everybody's kind of got a little bit of the burden of the labor. You got to put the cabbage on there, a little pico, a little bit of whatever this pinkish mayonnaise is. Oh, that's good. Oh, here's a lime. Here's a whole radish. What is that? Where does that go? You eat bites of radish between bites of taco. It's cool.
Yeah.
And they just, it's not about anything but providing great food. There's some pride involved, but it's just so different. And it's so much fun to watch, because it reminds you of why you do what you do, and what is good food really.
That's fascinating. That it's so funny how, like, even you describing this taco, I feel like I just had an enjoyable experience hearing you talk about this taco. Right. That's so cool how food can do that. That's one thing I'm curious about. I can't remember if I heard it on a podcast or whatever, but I heard you say like food just kind of like you were drawn to it. As soon as you worked in a restaurant, you're like, I wanted to do this. What do you think it is about, other than the fact that we need it to survive, but food and and your relationship with it that has dictated much of your life? Why do you think food in particular?
I don't know the answer to that, but I was drawn to it early on, and I didn't realize it. But there's other things that I was drawn to that I didn't realize early on, is that I used to like to play in the woods. I like to sneak around the woods and play in the woods. I didn't grow up in a hunting family, and it took me. I probably had this. I'm not super sharp a lot of the time. It was probably like 2 years ago. And I was like, I used to just romp around in the woods, play army and build stuff, I was building blinds, basically, and I didn't realize the whole time it's just I wanted to hunt, but I didn't grow up in a hunting family.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with food. We did fish, and I would bring home fish, and I was just like, the idea of then consuming that fascinated me. And there was a real pivotal moment when I went out. I'll never forget this. It's me and a friend, as soon as I could drive, it was over. I was just like, well, I'm fishing now. I have a car, and I've got a lake
And a rod.
I'm out, and so I just fished. And we went up to the lake in North Texas, around Denton. and we went up to the lake, and I remember there was a cold front, so the fishing was real bad, but I managed to catch a fish. I mean, it's funny because when I was a kid, I was a killer. I catch fish. I've
Yeah.
kind of lost my edge. I
Yeah.
think I was I remember catching a lot of fish when I was a kid. I just had that drive.
Blame it on the weather or something. I don't know.
There was this cold front, and I was standing on this big brush pile, and I caught a big crappie. I mean, I remember so many details too. It was a little red and white jig. I caught this big crappie. I took it home. I filleted it, and I don't know if I had read. I think I had read about these like Canadian shore lunches. So like, this is back in the pre-internet days, obviously, and back in the day where you would you'd go to Canada to go fish, and then they would do this thing called a shore lunch, and they would fry bacon, and then they would take the bacon fat and they'd fry the fish in the bacon fat. And they'd, do it on the side of the river or the lake, just get out. Your guide would do that. And I mean, to me, I was just like, I was obsessed with this idea and fascinated by it and how in the moment that was. And so I tried to replicate that. I remember we had some bacon, and I fried some bacon, and we had some potatoes, and somehow I managed to fry some potatoes. And then I knew that you would put the fish in cornmeal and then fry that. And I didn't grow up in a food family. Like there was some cooking, but it was very simple. We had a lot of TV dinners, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I fried the fish, I fried the bacon, I fried the potatoes. And then of course you can eat that with ketchup, because, I was 15 or 16.
Ketchup on fish is good too.
It is good. I ketchup on eggs, fine with me. Good
point.
I mean, whatever. Who cares? Come on. People that tell you that there's something wrong with that, it's like you are wasting your energy.
Missing the point.
Yeah. Like it's objectively delicious. Anyway, so I made this meal, and I think at that point it was just like, it was kind of a done deal. I was like, this is my favorite thing to do, is to go and get food and cook it and enjoy it with other people or give it to other people. And it's just like, I mean, you can absolutely wake up every morning of your life and go apply that in a different and exciting way somehow, whether you're going to watch another episode of No Reservations on YouTube, or you're going to go pig hunting, or you're going to go pick berries, or you're going to take the dog on a walk and pick a bunch of Mexican plums, or you're going to read a cookbook that somebody recommended to you. I mean, the list goes on. You could dedicate millions of lifetimes to this vocation and still find it inspiring and exciting every single day, because it's just different and it changes, and you've got to eat. Yeah. Everybody around you's got to eat. And we have this cultural, like modern cultural situation of the restaurant, which allows you to present that to other people, and then you can have a lifestyle from that if you're lucky and successful and smart and all these other things. So there's so much that can be done around that simple idea of going out and getting food and cooking it. And I just it's incredibly fun to me. If I go on vacation with some friends or something, and I'll start cooking, and they're like, "Hey, are you sure, we can do this? You should be like chilling." I'm like, "You have no idea.
I've been waiting for this moment."
This is exactly what I want to be doing, forever. I get up in the morning and just find a project to cook, and I'll cook it, and I'm so happy doing it. Or I'm reading a cookbook or something about food. I love it, and it's a great place to be.
It's so fascinating. You especially given like the mission of Dai Due and the 2 books that you've written now, and just like who you are or your lifestyle now, it's fascinating to hear that you didn't hunt growing up. When did that become like a part of your life, and what was the impetus of that?
Yeah, I always wanted to, but just and that's really guided me in my the educational aspect of what I like to do. Like, what I enjoy the most is educating or talking about food, and the fact that I had to be taught and learn and teach myself a lot of things later in life really, I think, has informed how I I can empathize with others that didn't come up with that. I think everybody wants to hunt. And personally, I think every single person wants to, genetically.
Yeah.
That's like you can't just in 5 generations extract that from the human brain.
I would love to hear you tell that to like certain people. I think that would be a pretty funny conversation.
Yeah. I mean, they can deny it all
Yeah.
they want.
No, I agree with you.
But the fact is that they want to. I grew up not hunting, but thankfully my dad took me fishing all the time. He loved to fish, loves to fish. I just went fish with my dad last week as a gift. I took him,
That's
which
cool.
it's great.
Full circle.
Yes. Yeah. I was like, I got this. We're going to go down to the coast, get a guide and do all that. And we had a blast. It was so much fun. We didn't catch a ton of fish. We caught a few, caught some crabs, stuff. But it was a good time.
Bad day on the water is better than a good day on land is what they say for a reason.
Absolutely. But hunting, I knew that I wanted to do it. But there wasn't anybody in my family or a circle. We grew up relatively poor. Nobody had land. No family had land. And in Texas, that's a barrier. And I see that as a barrier now. And it's one of the things that I would love to help as many people get over as possible.
You're referring to the privatization of land, like how it's like 99% private?
Yeah.
Something like that?
It is. I'm not. That's a different topic. I am not opposed to that.
Oh yeah, neither am I. What are you referring to in the hurdle then? Just
the hurdle
not
is
having access to it?
Sure. Or the familial access, the cultural access, whatever it is, the monetary access for so many people. I think that I didn't have that, but as soon as I did, I was just ready to go. I was probably 29. I think, when I started, and I was lucky enough to have a mentor who I'm still very dear friends with, who had land. We were buying meat from him, and so he's like, "You should come down. You want to hunt?" And I was like, "Do I ever?" I've waited, I think, 29 years for this. I've been playing around in the woods without live ammo for this whole time. I'm ready to go, and I was in some ways just absolutely primed for it mentally. And I think that I got a decent edit pretty quick because I'd been thinking about it for so long.
Yeah.
And so, shot a deer, shot a dove. And then it was just on after that. And then I think that some of the appeal of the books and the education that I've undertaken now is because that experience is fresh, and I can empathize with people that are brand new to it. I understand their excitement. I understand their jitters and the mixed emotions that they might have. And I've made the mistakes that they're about to make recently as an adult, as they're about, so perspective wise, I think that it was great for me to enter into that later in life rather than having kind of the comfort of just, easing into it whenever I wanted.
Yeah.
And it's been a pretty wonderful journey. And now I've got a kid that's hunting, and she's 13, and she's been hunting since she was 7.
That's awesome.
And she loves it. She hates fishing, which is hilarious.
Yeah, you grew up fishing, not hunting. She doesn't.
Yeah. Well, to her great credit, she's not a big fish eater. And I, as disappointed as I can get, I'd be like, "Hey, you want to go fishing?" She's just like, "No." I'm like, that's my fault, because I instilled in her, if you're not doing it to go eat it, then leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
And so she does, and it's like, well, that is exactly what I told her. So, it's like, I cannot blame her for that, but she loves to hunt. And, she at this point is providing, I would say, the majority of meat that's in the freezer, which I find to be just very compelling.
That's awesome.
I love that. But yeah, coming later in life, having those experiences as an adult, I think it was just very beneficial.
I'm reminded of a quote or like a saying that I remember in baseball, like the best player is often not the best coach. And so from my experience, like I mentioned earlier to you, I killed my first deer when I was 9 or 10. I'd been in the woods since I think I shot my first gun when I was 4. Just so like the reason I say that is I have friends who have never shot a gun or never hunted, and I don't think I have that. Not because I'm like not trying to empathize with them. I just like don't remember what it was like to ask the question of like, what do you mean wind? The wind's important. What does that
Yeah.
mean? Or like, what do you mean you sit here? Why do you sit here? Why did they do this? Or when do you go hunt? Like even when, hey, why do we sit in the stand in the morning or in the evening? It's like those questions are sort of foreign to me because I literally don't even remember asking them. So I feel like for you, that's a really good point because you had to do that as a conscious adult. So you're familiar with those questions, which I would assume makes you a better teacher than if it wasn't that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. And it's been a really great ride too, as far as learning also that education is where I want to be. I taught a butchery class last night and we had about 100 people there. And the response was beyond what I could have imagined. And I've taught hundreds of these things, but something about last night, it was just, the people were so excited and appreciative. And I got up today and woke up to all these beautiful messages that people were sending me about how great that was and how it helped them. And I really realized that it's the education for me is where I want to be, which is one of the reasons that I've had to basically extricate myself from day-to-day restaurant life is I can't be, to kind of loop back to that. I can't be a chef on the line and still do all of those things. And I think that, I look at Janie, the chef at the restaurant, and I'm like, I cannot do this better than you can. You have taken everything that I taught you and all the ideals that I've instilled into you and this restaurant and just run with it, like beyond my wildest dreams.
That's got to feel good.
It feels great, but that's her. That's her. It's not me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like I set her up. I was like, this is what we do here. This is where you source this and that. And, look for blackberries in late May, and like a million details like that. And then she got it and then she did it better. And that enables me to really pursue exactly what it is that I want to do, which is the education. It's just like, I love writing books. I love talking to people one-on-one. I love doing the demos. And hearing like, I didn't know how to do that. Now I know how to do that. And I'm like, that is awesome. Like last night, several people were like, I didn't have the confidence to do this before. And now I do. And I'm like, that is exactly why I want to be here. I want you to send me a picture of a fully broken down deer and a well-fed family, like that for me is like absolute success. And I have had to extricate myself from that day to day, the night times, the crazy schedule and everything that comes with restaurant life. I've had to just kind of back away from that and become more support in the background in order to enable that. But it's cool. I got no complaints.
It's such a cool, you're a bridge in many ways. As I mentioned, I feel like I was blessed and lucky to have a dad who bridged that gap for me at a young age, but that bridge, that's a big old bridge to cross, especially the longer in life you get from eating food to killing it and then making it food. Like that's a damn big, like valley to cross. And in many ways, you're able to be that bridge for so many people, which I know my experience and how rewarding it has been to hunt and fill my own freezer and butcher and clean an animal, and to also get like to your ethos, like to give it to people. That's probably one of the most exciting and gratifying feelings I've ever felt in my life. To be able to allow people to do that, that's got to be it's good for them because they get to understand that too. But for you, you're like their like what would you say, like their guide almost through the entire journey, which is really cool.
Yeah, but I mean, it's very important to I constantly remind myself is like, again, I was there not so long ago, and the importance of saying when you don't know something, like, well, how do you do this? I'll be like, honestly, I don't know. I was asked that this morning, like, hey, would you do a demo on how to best, skin a deer for a shoulder mount? And I'm like, no, I'm not really good at that. In fact, one of the guides at the hunting school, his name's Adam Parma. I'm like, when I need a deer broken down for a shoulder mount. I'm like, hey, Adam, we come do that, because he just does it really
Yeah.
well, and I'll watch him and I'll try to get there. But, I think that's also very important. And it serves a really, really good purpose too, in that people that are new to this, they're trying to develop their skills, when they see that you don't know everything, and it's like, listen, we're all still learning here. But we're just having a very honest sharing right here. And the honesty is really important. Don't bullshit about something you don't know. And, I think that really gains trust a lot, and serves you more than anything. If you say, I don't know, sometimes it's like the best answer.
Yeah.
It's like, but I'm curious. And then maybe somebody else will like raise their hand, be like, I've done this before and that worked. And I'll be like, noted and cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Now you know more.
Now we all know more. The entire room knows
Mm-hmm.
more, and it's like, and that's why we're here,
When you say school, you're referring to the new School of Traditional Cookery. Is that what it's called?
Exactly.
Correct me if I'm wrong. That's been around longer than the restaurant, or
longer than the brick and mortar. So the business has been open as of October of this year will be 17 years.
the Dai Due business.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes. The brick and mortar restaurant is coming up on 10 years. And the new School of Traditional Cookery, which is the educational branch of the restaurant, has been around for 14 years. So 2008.
Very cool.
That math doesn't work at all.
I don't know math, so we're good.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, but a long time, a decade and a half-ish or so. But yeah, that's we started doing just butchery classes in the beginning. I was at Vespaio, in fact. I was trained as a butcher as part of my prep duties. I worked almost every station there, but really worked a lot on prep, and so was breaking down cold animals. This is before I hunted.
So you came like into hunting with that perspective,
Right? I came into hunting with a butchery background, which was really interesting. In retrospect, that I knew way more about what happens, after than I did before.
Well, then probably most hunters too, or a lot of hunters at least.
Right. And that's really the prime focus of our education now is like, what do you do after? I'm not going to go out there and be like, hey, listen, I'm an incredible hunter. I mean, sometimes I do like to say I'm an incredible hunter, but I'm a terrible shot.
Yeah.
It's like, no, but I make mistakes all the time, and I'm not, I love it. But I'm not going to ever profess that I'm great at it. But having that butchery background was really, pretty great to have. It's like I know where all these cuts are and how to cook them. And so the new school was just a really good way for me to start with that education process. And we started doing hunting schools, which are 3 or 4 day long classes. Everything from sighting in a rifle all the way to packaging, and you eat game throughout the weekend. That's all we would serve. And did that for many, many years. I'm actually taking this year off from it. Just to kind of take a mental break, and also just focus on shorter term classes. We're still doing classes this year, but we're doing little 3-hour blocks, just really focused on butchery, which is where everybody is really focused. Like if you have a 4-day class, you might have an experienced hunter and he'll be like, listen, I don't care if I shoot a deer. I'm just here for that class. I'm like, well, that's kind of hardcore, man. But excuse me. But yeah, we've been doing that for a long time, and we've covered many, many topics from, fish and seafood down on the coast, hogs and deer.
You've taken a group down to the coast and caught some fish and stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's logistically really difficult.
Yeah, I was going to say, that sounds pretty...
for reasons that I won't bore everybody with, but it's something I'm very passionate about. I still love to fish, absolutely. But like putting together classes is just a little bit tricky. Something I would love to get back into, but because I love seafood and I love the prepping seafood, and I love dispelling myths around seafood too. Like, you can't eat that. I'm like, whenever somebody's like, you can't eat that, I'm like,
I was going to say, that sounds like a common thread for you. The
Yeah.
hog.
Well, just resources,
Yeah.
and the mythology behind it and the way that our culture treats food. And it's from, we have so much here, and we have, just like I was saying about the fancy restaurants, they can have anything they want whenever they want. And that's really informed our palates distinctly, in that we're a rich nation and we can have whatever we want. And if it's just like, we only want the tenderloin and the loin, then so be it. We can have that. We don't have to rely on eating the kidneys anymore. And so that's informed the cultural history of our food distinctly, and what our palate accepts. Like, we like our beef to taste, sweet of corn.
Mm-hmm.
We don't like our beef to taste like grass, which is what beef
What it eats. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's probably the easiest, most, dare I say, digestible way to put that, about how that's changed. So yes, tackling lesser eaten or regarded resources has been a prime focus of mine, namely hogs, but I think well beyond that. And that's something that we address a lot in the schools, is how to make the most out of your freshly dead pig, or how to get the most out of the deer beyond just the back straps. And so that was a real success, and that was, it was very fun, 14 years of guiding. I don't know how many times I've sat in a blind with a person when they've shot their first deer.
That's cool.
And they're shaking, hyperventilating. And what they don't know is that I'm sitting next to them and my heart is just racing. I'm just like, it never fails.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about a fun job. That
Yeah.
was a good one. And then it's like, and then we're going to go back and we're going to break this thing down. I'm going to teach you how to cook it, and then 5 years later, I'm going to hear from that person and they'll be like, yeah, I'm still doing it. It's really cool.
It's a gift that keeps on giving, literally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm even, once again, it sounds like it can cover a lot of experience levels, like a class or a school like that. Like somebody like the experienced hunter you said might be able to come in and they've hunted their whole life, but they don't know what to do with, like me, for example. There's parts of deer where I'm like, I don't know what would be the best use for this. I'll just put it in a grind, or I got like just random stuff like that. But being able to learn from somebody like yourself on how to prep it properly, which is important, and then how to cook it properly, that's obviously valuable for somebody who's never done it before, but even somebody that has these ingrained patterns or thought processes, or maybe even like false stigmas. We could talk about the hog too, which I'm very curious about, like about dispelling those myths that you mentioned. That's such a cool premise. I really can't imagine the value that would bring somebody, that especially somebody who's never hunted before. Like it's like baptism by fire. You've never hunted before, you kill an animal. You've never hunted before, so you've never butchered an animal. Then you get to butcher it and cook it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I would say if you went back and looked at our clientele over the last however many years that was, so we determined it's right around 50-50 brand new hunters and experienced hunters.
That's epic. That's so cool.
What's great about that too is everybody's sitting around the same table for every meal, along with a guide per person. So 6 guides are there, and they're all not professional hunting guides. They're kind of these hand-picked ragtag group of, wildlife biology degrees, or this or that, or just people that are funny,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That can ease the tension.
Like to hunt, it's just like we had a great group of guides, and the cooks are all there for a very specific reason. And when you put them together, along with this, diverse group of clients that are, might be just like, whoa, I just killed my first deer and I'm trying to hold it together to, I own a ranch and I kill 50 deer a year. But they're all sitting at the same table, and it's the amount of information and storytelling and just this general like sense of togetherness that you get from a group like that is meaningful beyond just learning where the backstrap is.
Yeah. Here's a question. What would you say to somebody that's listening to this? Because I'm certain that there is people that haven't hunted. And maybe I bet you there's people that are listening to this in Austin. Some of them might be at that gym right there that have never hunted before but are intrigued, what would you recommend be the first step? Like, how would you recommend they move that way?
Yeah, I mean, find a place and find a mentor, and that's becoming more and more available. There's some great organizations in Texas, Stewards of the Wild, namely Texas Wildlife Association, TWA, has a very robust adult learn to hunt program. I mean, our own program is great. It's focused on hunting, but it's really more broad spectrum. And I guess if I misspoke, I would say it's focused on the food part of it, with hunting as like an ancillary part of it. It's a big part. You spend the most time hunting, but the TWA course is really focused on hunting and getting people out hunting. And we've seen this real push in getting people out. And to loop back to the private land versus public land, the best way that functions currently in Texas is to get people access onto private land with the blessing of the landowner, of course. And sometimes that can work out. And I think that we're just in the very beginning stages of developing these ideas around sharing the land, not out of like, oh, you need to share this, but like, how does this benefit the landowner who is ostensibly the steward of that land? And in these cases, it's most definitely. I mean, if they're entering into one of these programs where they're letting people come on their land to help maintain deer populations or help manage invasive populations like audad or hogs, they're stewarding their land, and that's best case private landowner, and they're sharing it with people that now want to enter into the hunting realm. And there will be an argument made that we can't sustain that many hunters. And in my firm belief, and I really, I've seen this anecdotally, not everybody that hunts, comes and wants to hunt and hunts for the first time, many of them never hunt for a second time. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a great thing, actually, because it only takes once for that to compute into so many very important lessons. Resources, taking of a life, gun ownership. There's so many positives that they can gain from going hunting one time and experiencing that. They're probably never going to go to a fast food place and eat a burger again without at least acknowledging that something died in order for them to have that meal, and maybe subconsciously or whatever. And then just like their appreciation for resources. And it can happen one time. And yeah, granted, we can't have every person in this country can't hunt. It's unfortunate. And I know I said that everybody wants to, but if everybody had the mentality of what it means to take an animal's life and then utilize that resource to its fullest and enjoy it to its fullest, I think that it could be an overall very positive cultural change in the way that we treat so many things, each other, resources, animals, everything, diet, it would have a pretty indelible mark on us as a society.
That's fascinating. I agree with you. I think that, well, you mentioned appreciation of resources. It's evident from my perspective. I don't know you very well, but you seem to be a very resourceful guy. I think that speaks like in the ethos of Dai Due and the school and even your books. It's very evident that that's important. Like, what did you say earlier about the restaurants? A high ticket restaurant can get anything they want, but this Mexican taco place used what they had. So it's evident to me, at least from my perspective, that you are a fan of using what you have. And to segue that into the hunting conversation, because I think they're very uniquely tied, especially in Texas and most of the South, is the hogs. Like, that is a resource that is abundant beyond probably what most people would consider reasonable, but that's a resource that a lot of people neglect. I think it's actually a unique resource in that it's in my opinion, perfect starting place for people to hunt, because most people want them off their land. Most people would rather give up hogs on their land to people they don't know as well than deer and things of that sort. So I would love to hear your thoughts. I'm sure you've spoke about this at great lengths, but just your thoughts on on the state of hogs and like how it impacts what we're talking about with introducing people to hunting and the locally sourcing and using of resources. I would love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, it is. It was the elephant in the room for so long. And I often describe the hog book as being a compilation of answers. And that if I was ever addressing a group, I'm doing a butchery class, we're at a school, we're talking about food in general, and then there's going to be a question if they were a hunter or they were involved in land management in Texas or just curious about this topic, there's going to be a question about hogs. And I think, once I hit 1,000 questions, I was like, why don't I compile all these questions and answers into a book? Because for all the reasons you just addressed, they are perfect for that. They are invasive and destructive. Therefore, landowners need them off and might need some help with that. And with that creates an immediate transactional experience where it's like, oh, well, I want to hunt, and then this person has hogs that need to be hunted. They must be controlled. And I'll talk about, when I, tell a vegan that they want to hunt on a genetic level, the next topic is going to be, so what do we do with the pigs?
Yeah.
Do we put them on a farm upstate? What?
Yeah.
We let them do what they're doing. It's like
multiple billions of dollars of agricultural damages.
Vegetables, no less. That's your food.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
What is the solution that you recommend for that? So my solution, of course, is just eat as many of them as we can. And then you enter into this really interesting thing where you start to get misinformation and mythology about their edibility, and then a lot of failures in the kitchen. People having bad experiences, like, well, I did this and it came out this way. I did this because I this is the way I cook this, and then when I cooked a hog like that, it wasn't good. I'm like, okay.
Therefore, hogs aren't edible.
Right. There, exactly. And then I look at that same equation, and then you're able to really readily identify where it starts, where the misinformation starts, or to put it in a more positive way, where there's an opportunity to present better information. And so that's when I started to really develop this very simple, easily digestible protocol for hogs, because it started off with one question. It's like, what's your favorite recipe for a wild pig? And I was like, I had to stop myself. Don't get snotty about your answer. Don't be a chef. You'll be like, well, what's the fat content? But really, what is the fat content? And so I was like, well, how do I ask that question of the person, without getting like, well, you need to do a fat analysis on this hog that you just shot. I mean, come on, that's not, how do you present this in a very easy to see, easy to use way that people are actually going to go out and do this? And so you got to strip this idea down of, if every deer is the same basically, and an elk is a big deer.
Yeah.
So it's like okay, we've covered it. This is how you do a whitetail. The backstrap on an elk is 3 times as big, therefore cut it to 1/3 of the size.
Yeah.
It's like there's not that much difference. But a hog presents all these different variables, what region, what it's been eating, time of year, sex, size, they grow rapidly. And so they present all these different variables. And so that's when the 4 categories was born of, there's in the hog book, we cover small pigs, medium-sized pigs, large boar, and large sow. And that was about as simple as I could get it. I could have broken it into 10 categories.
Sure.
But nobody's going to look at that. They're going to be like, that's very complicated. And it's, if one thing, I don't want to complicate this. Not for my own use, for their use. It's like, how do we really affect this? And it is by breaking them into those 4 categories. And so people can walk up to that freshly dead hog and they're like, oh, great, I got one. Oh, he looked a lot bigger in the scope. And you walk up there and like, oh, and if they've looked at the book, they're like, that's a medium pig. Boom, we won. Okay. And then what we do is we just give them a whole section of recipes, right after we do a butchery breakdown specifically for a medium-sized pig, which is going to be different than a huge fatty sow, but still easy enough. Like, but you've identified medium pig. Okay, boom. I'm gonna turn to this page. Looks familiar.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I got
It's
hanging.
like a playbook almost.
Yeah, that's what I got in the cooler right now. Is that? And then and then boom, 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 boom. Here's 40 recipes that are going to go along with that. And so, and pretty foolproof, straightforward, easy, some of them a little more requiring a little more time, a little more difficulty, but enough where you can go in and select, be like, listen, it's Tuesday. I need to get something on the table. Boom. There's a recipe for you. And just really tried to empathize with the hunters in order to execute this vision of like, how do we get out there and write the most concise manual for eating feral hogs that we possibly can? And that's what really drove that. And I do admire them as a resource. I love pigs. I think they're cool. I'll shoot every one of them. Don't get me wrong. And I think that some people are like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, that's not, loving them and not wanting to eat them is, you can do both. Mm-hmm. And so it was a success, and I think people have told me so many times that book helped them navigate that. And I'm like, that's great. That's what I wanted. That's exactly what I wanted. And so, sometimes it's good to step back and be like, cool, we did it. We did that, it was fun. And I like to say too, that it's like hundreds of people helped me write that book by asking those questions. It's like they informed me and I just kind of compiled it. I just, wrote it down and remembered. There's even one point where we were working on the book and I put out a call. I can't even remember what it was for specifically, and I just kept asking, like, what other, hit me with questions about feral hogs.
There's probably a lot of them.
Yeah. And let's just round them up. And then was still, while we were like finishing up the book, we're still like adding things in there from other questions or like looking at it and being like, oh, here's a gap, like we need to cover this. And
maybe there'll be a part 2, like in 20 years.
Yeah. An addendum. Yeah.
Here's a question for you. So, because I've heard everything, I've never had pronghorn. I've never eaten audad. I've eaten hog. I've killed hog. I very much so enjoy it. Those three are just the ones that come to mind of people that I, like, in my own experience have told me that, like, they don't taste good. Don't eat this.
Sure.
I'm sure there's other ones that I'm forgetting. But of the species that are, like, mythologized, as you said, like, oh, those are bad, don't eat them. What would you say is, like, what's the primary reason that people would think that? Does it start with how they're breaking it down? Is it more in the kitchen? Is it somewhere in between? Like, what would you say, like, the main reasons that people think that? Yeah. And where does it start?
Well, the first mythology is that so many times you'll be told that you can't eat audad, and somebody will say, let's say, they come up and say, you can't eat an audad. And
that's literally what I've been told before.
Yeah, and I'll be like, okay, well, what happened? And they're like, well, I never had it. Somebody told me that. I'm like, boom, there's
that's
one.
Literally what happened.
Yeah, it's like crazy. It's a game of inedible telephone right there. And so so right off. And also, what does that do for your mindset? It starts you from a place of thinking that you can't eat that thing, and you've been told. And culturally, I mean, hunting culture it's important, and our opinions and we're on a team together. We're hunters. And, a lot of times we hold the same opinions too. And so if you've been told by somebody that you respect and love, that's a big time hunter, that you can't eat audad, then you can't, just that simple, okay, well that, jury's back in and you can't eat them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's wrong. You can't eat them. And in fact, I miss having audad in my freezer. We didn't get one last year, but my daughter got one the year before, and it was a big ram. Second problem would be audad is not venison, is not beef. So you have, honestly, among hunters who are usually the ones that are cooking the audad. Maybe they're not bringing it home and someone else is cooking it. a lot of times you'll see hunters approach venison, a deer, as they would beef. They're going to throw it on the smoker. And so let's get even more specific and technical and say that in Texas, where most of the audad are in Texas. So this topic is very Texas centric. And I'll ask you a question. What cooking tool do most hunters use to cook anything here in this state? I mean, what method?
Offset smoker would be my guess.
100%, an offset smoker. So what you're doing is you're taking an incredibly lean meat that exercises constantly, can climb vertical cliffs.
It lives for a living.
It lives for a living. I love that. And it's very lean, and it's a very dense, muscular meat. And you're putting it in a very dry environment, and then you're complaining that it is dry. Because that's the methodology for cooking here, because it works for beef that is coated in fat because of corn.
Yeah.
So
because it eats for a living.
Yeah, it eats
Seriously.
for a living. There you go. I love that. I'm taking that too.
Yeah, I heard that from a hunter. So
yeah.
There you go.
So you've got there's several problems that are happening here. Is that you're approaching the meat in the wrong way, and then you're blaming it, and that's what's talk about some victim shaming there. It's like I killed this thing, and then it had the audacity not to taste good when I cooked it improperly. So, and that's what's happening or they're applying at best venison techniques to an audad, and if you've ever butchered an audad, it's hard to describe about the density of that muscle and.
It's noticeable.
Yes,
really,
very noticeable. Like when your sharp knife is moving through it, your arm is working more. You're pushing harder because it's just firmer. It's just a harder tissue, and so it's not more difficult to cook necessarily, but you're not going to have the same tender results. If you take an audad backstrap and throw it on the grill and cook it medium rare, and then you cut it into a 1/2-inch thick slice, it's going to be chewy. You do the same thing with a deer, it's going to be amazing. Mm-hmm. It's going to be very tender just because they don't live the same lives. And so we just categorize these things to the extreme. And for me, I can't write a whole book about audad because it's so hyper regional. It's like I got to sell books, and there's only X amount of books.
The audad book coming next. It's like $3.
I have people. That is probably the most requested thing because I've definitely set the standard of the blank book.
Yeah.
The hog book, the turkey book, and by far the what everybody like throws at me is the audad book, and I'm like, I appreciate that. I really do. I mean, like it's what a compliment. To be like, hey, we're struggling with this now. Help, I'm like, I mean, that's really cool.
Maybe like a blog post or something.
Yeah, but it's just like you're not going to achieve that tenderness. So unless you slice it paper thin, and I've had some great audad backstrap that I sliced very, cooked medium rare, let it rest really well, and found the grain. And the grain on a backstrap doesn't run perpendicular or parallel to that backstrap. It runs at it's probably at about a 40-degree off. And so you got to find that grain and nail it, and very thinly sliced. And that was amazing. Like even on a smoker, if you nail it, you got to cut it really thin. I think most of the complaints I hear about audad are texture and then followed by flavor. And that's where I get a little confused because to me, the flavor of an audad is exceptional. And I don't even like lamb that much, to be honest. I'll eat it every once in a while, not my go-to. And for some reason I love audad, but I've never found it to be very strong. Granted, I am eating hill country audad and not West Texas audad. So we're going to be, admittedly looking at some probably drastic diet differences, sage and just a rougher diet. But I've eaten rams, I've eaten the big boys. And that's another problem right there. Yeah. It's like, well, what audad are you shooting? The biggest, oldest one? All right. Right.
Yeah.
You see, like, well, if you want like tenderness, you're going to probably want to shoot a ewe or a kid.
Like trophy hunting versus cooking hunting or whatever. I don't know what you would call it.
Yeah.
Like taste
hunting.
I mean,
the funny thing is that when I was hunting with my daughter, And we had talked about it extensively, and she was agreed that, we needed to get a good taste in audad because we had a good chance of seeing some in this property. And as soon as that big ram stepped out, she's like, "That's the one I want to shoot." And I was like, "That's really funny," because, I was like, I kind of knew that was going to happen, and that's maybe, who knows? Let's analyze the thousands of generations, and maybe that's the one we choose for a lot of different reasons. But she chose that one, and I was fine with it.
Yeah.
But it ended up being amazing. But what did we get off of that animal? A bunch of ground, a bunch of sausage, and a bunch of stew meat. Like, if it wasn't ground maybe twice through the medium plate and turned into some very delicious sausage, it was cut into cubes and it was stewed in some way. So that's going to be chili, Italian style ragouts. And then what I really found was great was curries.
Interesting.
And that, it makes so much sense.
Are they an Indian animal? Isn't Nilgai Indian?
Nilgai's Indian. Audad are from North Africa.
Interesting.
But you can also apply like North African stews, which are, not to oversimplify these two incredibly rich and robust cuisines.
Yeah.
But, heavily spiced is the one thing they do have in common. They also have a lot of ginger, a lot of garlic, things like cumin, coriander, and dried chilies are common in both of those. But it's the slow cooking of said things with a lot of flavor. And it's not like you're trying to cover it up. I remember I posted one time about an audad recipe, and I'd put a little bit of cinnamon in there, which is common in both those cuisines. And somebody's like, "Oh, well, you're just trying to cover up the flavor." And I'm like, well, first off, what? Come on. Like, that is a pretty highly flavored animal. It can handle it, first off. And also, I'm not trying to cover anything up. I'm trying to work with it here, and that's all. You're also negating thousands of years of mole, curry, tagine, these beautiful cuisines that have used spices in order to accent flavors and create these really elaborate and complex flavors too. So we found that for slow cooking audad, it was almost exemplary, in making things like curries or even a carne guisada, a total South Texas style, light on the tomato, heavy on the cumin, almost like a gravy. But the meat doesn't like fall apart. It can still be tender, but hold its shape a little bit. And it still has enough of this like beefiness as far as flavor goes. And I think it's very beefy to hold up to it. And I started to find myself like, you know what? I could really get into having some audad in the freezer all the time. And we are so lucky in Texas where we could eat 3 major invasives in this state and eat very, very well without even harming a whitetail.
Don't tell me it's hog, it's hog, audad, and axis?
Correct.
Axis is considered invasive as well?
Absolutely.
I don't know much about them.
Well, that's inarguable, and everybody will agree that axis are delicious.
Yeah, I heard somebody say it's like one of the best meats.
Yeah, I would agree.
Interesting.
I would agree. Like, it's a fantastic meat.
I've never had it. I know. There's what's the island in Hawaii where it's just like
Maui.
insane. It's like thousands and thousands of them, right?
Yeah.
Which is crazy. On the audad, so are these things, because audad, that's a more, what would you say? It's less famous than hog, less of a problem too. It's more local.
Yeah, it's just so localized. I mean, they have to have these vertical cliffs, and I mean, the environment that they thrive in is so specific. Whereas a hog,
literally anywhere.
Literally anywhere.
On the hogs though, is there similarities that you're seeing? Because I mean, I've had people. I'll say it again. I think hog is delicious. Like, I've had absolutely delicious feral hog, and I actually want to mention this real quick too, and hear your thoughts on it. Hog are unique in the way that they can adapt, and you would know this better than me, so I'm preaching to the choir. But like, you could take a hog out of a farm and put it in the wild, and like within months, it's changing.
Correct.
The word feral, I think, turns a lot of people off, because it's really it's damn near the same hog. Like, you could say feral hog, oh, you can't eat it. Well, actually, that was just a domestic hog 2 months ago.
Yeah, we've literally
so
shot feral hogs that had ear tags,
which is
it counts. I mean, in that animal, we determined had probably been out of the pen for 3 or 4 years,
Wow.
We're hunting near a domestic pig operation, and in the early days of that operation, his fencing wasn't great. There was hogs getting in, hogs getting out. But yeah, I always say a feral hog is, I mean, or it just depends on their address.
Yeah.
And once they get outside of the fence, that's a feral pig.
Yeah.
And they can have all the qualities of a feral pig, like the shaggier, elongated snout, leaner, things like that. But I mean, they are the same animal.
Are you seeing a lot of the same? Yeah, I wanted to mention that because I actually just drew that correlation when you were speaking about like the word feral. It's like pretty much the same animal, but that word makes it. Oh well, I can have pork in the grocery store, but God forbid it's a feral hog. I've literally had people that hunt hogs tell me that you can't eat feral hog. I'm like, you're wrong. First off, second off, the question is, are you seeing similar stuff with hogs as you are with audads? Like, what compels so many people to sort of feral hog right away?
I would compare the mindset around audad specifically to that of a big boar, where they're categorically regarded as inedible, and it's wrong on both counts. There's some big boars can be off. In my experience, that's way more of a rarity than people are letting on, or you'll have the weight cut off. You can't eat one that's over. Name your weight, like 100 pounds, 130 pounds, 200 pounds, whatever. People, so okay. And I think the audad they're kind of lumped into that same thing. I hate to say it. A lot of it, I think, is derived from laziness, that some people they just don't want to clean the animal. They don't want to process the animal. And without getting too far into this, it's all about having these conversations with people. And then as you start to get answers, it might take years, and then you start to identify one thing, and it might be kind of an epiphany one day where you're like, that's what it is. Okay. And then when I was asked this question, I was doing a promo for the turkey book, and this guy asked a great question. He raised his hand. He's like, what's the thing that people do wrong in processing their own animals? Like, what's the main thing that you've identified as that? And I was like, okay, this is going to be a technical answer. Let me think about it for a second. It's going to involve ice or temperature. And then I was like, wait a minute. I know the answer to that. And it's that you don't enjoy it. You don't enjoy that part of it. And I was like, you know what? And then from that point on, all these other answers came.
That makes so much sense. It's like the chore of it all.
Yeah, let's map it. Okay. Like we're going to go hunting, and we're going to go deer hunting this season. Okay. In November, or, it's going to be awesome. Mm-hmm. Oh, we're excited. Okay. Yeah. It started, the clock's ticking. So on this thing. And so let's map it out. And then a week ahead of time, we're going to start getting our gear ready. And then we're going to get in the truck and we're going to drive for 5 hours.
Anticipation.
Yeah. It's cool. We're talking about it, whatever. It's fun. This is fun. We've sighted in rifles. We've done all this stuff, got a cooler full of food. We're ready to do this weekend deer hunt. And then we're going to go out, and we didn't see anything the first night, but then the second night, oh man, boom, we both got deer. This is awesome. This is exciting. This is great. And then it's over. Fun's over. Right. Mm-hmm. We're as far as this storyline, we're right about halfway through it. We've got a couple months before this trip.
Enter the processing plan.
Ostensibly, this animal will last us a few months afterwards too, until we consume that last package. That's when the story ends. Okay, from the minute we decide that we're going to go hunt deer until we eat that last little bit of it, and the fun has just stopped. And to me, that is 100% mentality. Like, why does the fun have to stop? You know what's fun is more fun. So, like, why don't we just hit a reset button and say, you know what's fun? We're going to go skin and gut those deer. Let's drink a couple beers. This is super fun. We'll listen to some music, joke around a little bit. Oh, that's pretty fun. Get them in the cooler. It's like, oh, hey, man, we got to go home. Let's load them up, get them ready. Cool, drive home, listen to more music. That was a great trip. Get home, it's like, well, in a couple of days, we got a cool front rolling in. It's going to be a nice, cool morning. I'm going to take them out to the porch and I'm going to break these animals down. I'm going to put on a podcast. This is where you plug your
The
podcast.
Tyro experience, obviously.
And I'm going to get a big old cup of coffee and I'm just going to sit there and daydream about all these great meals I'm going to have because this is fun. I love breaking these animals down. It's good. It's nice and cool. I got nothing to worry about. I'm highly organized. I'm as organized as before I left for this trip.
Mm-hmm.
I've got, we
because
both.
it's as serious as that's fun.
We
You're looking
had
forward to it.
our ammo. We had our guns dialed. We had everything. We had the menu planned. We had the beer. We had the sleeping bags. Name it. We had all that done. We were organized, which makes it more enjoyable. So you're able to live in that moment. And then I'm going to go out there. My knives are sharp. I own 2 big cutting boards. I bought ice last night in anticipation of what's going to go down to keep everything nice and chilled. I've got a plan for my sausage. This is going to be fun. And you're just having fun all the way through the packaging. And you're like sitting there and they're like, what's going to be really fun is when I get this last bit of that deer vac sealed, when I hear that seal bar finish, psst, I'm going to pull it out. And then I'm going to put that I'm going to label it and I'm going to put that in the freezer. And all of that was fun. And if you stop having fun, then you're not going to appreciate the rest of that journey. And that's, I really think that's where we're going wrong so much in that. And it's like, we're not appreciating that. And so you're breaking this audad down. And instead you need to be thinking like, okay, these are going to be, I'm going to grind this. I'm going to make a huge batch of bolognese out of this and it's going to be really good, or some kind of cool lamb stew that, my family from Ireland used to make, or hell, my family from Morocco used to make, or my family from India.
Yeah.
You've got so many resources out there that are going to empower you to deal with that meat if you're willing to treat it like it wants to be treated, and you're not going to blame it, and you're going to enjoy that whole process. And then a month later, you're going to pull that first package out and you're going to be cooking and you're going to enjoy that too. Same organizational thing.
Mm-hmm.
And let's circle back to like when we first sat down. I'm a chef, it's like I am organized in the kitchen. It's like I know what I'm going to need to cook and make that as efficient as possible, because I think people get frustrated in the kitchen because they're just like, oh, I got to chop this. Oh, it's burning, that. And it's like, the same organization that you can apply to getting ready for that trip or heading out to the blind can be applied at every point throughout. And that's kind of my whole point. Is just like, here's not only how much cumin you want to add to that, or how brown you want those onions to be, but it's like, how do you mentally organize yourself on trips and through processing and in the kitchen for that final product to make it easier and more enjoyable? Because if you're stressed out because you're not organized, you're not having fun.
That's a hell of an answer. I've never, no, seriously, that was awesome to hear. I've never thought about it that way in my entire life. And what came to mind is my good buddy Noah Ryan sat in this exact chair and talked about gamifying your life. And that's what it reminds me of. Like, make a game out of it. How clean can you get this backstrap out? How clean can you quarter this leg or this shoulder? How can you make it a game? How delicious can I make this meal that I've never made before for my family?
Love it.
That's so cool. I've never thought about that before, but it's because I'm sure a lot of hunters can relate. Maybe you can even relate. Because the reality for me is like, I don't know if every time I ever look at an animal that I've just shot, it's like, here we go. But there is a switch that I can flip. But you say, okay, you know what? Let's see how good I can do. Let's see how fun we can make this. Mm-hmm. I like that paradigm a lot. How fun can we make this? Because it can seem like the chore part of it. Because you said it's like all this anticipation, dopamine, shot animal down, and you're like, oh shit, maybe somebody else does this now. But like, how fun can you make it? I love that. I'm gonna hopefully implement that this fall. I love that a lot. I
love breaking animals down. Like, it's often I will just volunteer to do it because I enjoy it, especially deer. They're just the most fun. Yeah, they're also the easiest. I'm a bit lazy, let's face it, but like I enjoy it so much that sometimes we get back and they're like, "Hey, I got a deer," and it's like, "You want me to do that? You want to drink a couple beers? I'll do this." Yeah.
Sign me up.
Yeah, it's fun. It's the enjoyment of the whole process. And I think, like, you got to step back and look at that. Like I said, from summer to spring, we're looking at a multi-month process from planning to fruition on these things, and just try to maintain that same level. I think that's a great way to put it.
One of the things probably the biggest thing I'll take from this conversation is the idea that, like, my dad always used to tell me, as a kid, you want to go hunting, you want to go kill something, you want to go fishing, you want to go catch fish every time. He would say, it's why, I'm sure you've heard this before, it's called hunting, not killing. It's called fishing, not catching.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, it's like even more than that. It's not just shooting. Like, it's hunting. It's like the process of eating food. And the thing I'll take from this conversation the most is, like, the appreciation for that entire process.
Yeah.
And the fact that, because the other reality is, it's going to happen. Like, somebody's going to do it. It's just a matter of, okay, well, am I going to take ownership of the fact that I just decided to take this animal's life?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to outsource the unsexy part,
mm-hmm.
or am I just going to take ownership and make it as fun as I can? I really do love that paradigm shift.
And the time argument to me, and this is one that I love using that. And then I think the first time was we were sitting around the table and somebody was saying, they were making fun of me for plucking doves. And I was like, I pluck every single dove. And they were like, you pluck all your doves. How long does that take? And I was just like, where do you hunt doves? I'm going to ask a question first before I answer your question. He was like, well, look in this spot. And I was like, how long does it take you to get there? And he's like, 3 hours. Okay.
There you go.
So sitting in a truck for 3 hours is more meaningful than the 25 minutes it takes you to, let's call it 45.
Yeah.
45 minutes it takes you to pluck a limit of doves. Also, you get to do that in a field at sunset, with friends, and a beer. It's super cool. And that was like, and the time argument to me, I'm like, and what really drove all of this home, the time, the process, everything, what really slowed this down enough for me was when I really got into turkey hunting, because that is something that requires that you move so slowly most of the time. Sometimes you have to run, but most of the time you're going to sit there you might sit under a tree for 7 hours, 8 hours, not moving, just thinking, like, maybe they're coming back, Yeah. Just the most subtle way to achieve that. And then likelihood is you're going to walk out of the woods that day with no turkey, and then you're going to repeat that the next day and maybe the next. But then when it does happen, it happens. And then at that point, it's like, man, I just spent 4 days being real still. I've got time to really enjoy breaking this bird down. And I've really got time to take care in cooking this, because the time argument is out the window at this point, because I've spent so much time. And then you're like, we can't quantify it like that anymore. We've already spent so many hours in pursuit of this thing, that anything that's resultant from that isn't going to take that much time, And so, and I think
4 days.
Yeah. Turkey was really the thing. We hunted turkeys for 4 days in New Mexico, and we did not get any turkeys. And on the way out, all we were doing was planning our trip to New Mexico the next year, so we could potentially do it again. If you told me you're not going to kill a turkey next year because you could see into the future, I'd be like, I'm still going to go, because I like being in the mountains and walking around and hanging out with my buddy.
Yeah.
And because it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was turkey that really drove that home for me. In the past few years, when I really accepted that, the stages of hunting or fishing. Are you familiar with those?
No.
So this is not something that I came up with, by the way. So, and it can apply to hunting or fishing. Well, let's apply it to fishing in this context. It's like when the first phase is you're young and you want to catch any fish. And then the next phase is you want to catch a lot of fish. And then the next phase is you want to catch a big fish. And then the next phase is you want to catch a fish the way that you like to do it the most,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes perfect sense. And the same thing can apply to hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where I'm at in phase 4, which is by far the best phase, because you're just like, it's cool.
You've done everything.
Yeah, it's like I am as willing to just like, uh, people laugh. I have this code. Like if I'm on a trip and I send a picture of a sunrise or a sunset, it means that I didn't get anything. It's just like,
Yeah.
if I'm just
'Cause there's
sending
no
like
other pictures.
sunrise pics,
That's
that's
good.
what it means. But done but in an ironic way too. It's just like, but also sunrises and sunsets are amazing,
Yeah.
and they're fun. And it's fun to get out there and experience that. And I think that it is part of that whole process, and accepting failures and all these other things that connects you in the end to food,
Yeah.
and it's just like, how does it get any better than that?
It doesn't really. I mean, because the thing about food that I'm also going to take from this conversation, just to you've reignited my like appreciation for the fact that there's so many different things in the world. There's so many different tasks that everybody does, but the one of the things that every single human being that's alive today, unless you're fasting, is going to do is eat food.
Correct.
Every single one.
Every time. Yeah.
So,
you could have the best meal of your life, and the next day you're going to be hungry again.
yeah, that's so true. Here's a question, because we're pushing the 2-hour mark. I want to end on this. I just thought of this question. We'll see if it comes out properly. Given that fact that you're going to go eat a meal, I'm going to go eat a meal at Dai Due tonight, actually. My friends are going to eat a meal. All these people are going to eat meals. Everyone is a consumer of food. What is one thing that you can and would like to impart on people that eat food, which is everybody? Like what's like about the food?
Acknowledge the resource. Whether somebody in a field had to pick that and get that to market somehow, or it was hunted, or it was a domesticated animal that had to give up its life for it. Just briefly regard that in some way. I'm not saying you have to sit there and analyze every meal, but just it can take a second before every meal where you look at it. I think about things like that head of lettuce. Somebody touched it. I think that's really cool. I hope that person's treated equitably. I hope that animal had, as they say, one bad day.
Yeah. I've never heard that before. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely not me there. I think that, since it is something that we do all the time, if we almost passively regard that every time we eat or consume something, think about it just a tiny bit. Over time, we're kind of like chipping away to become a lot more focused on what it means to be a consumer of these resources. And I'm not saying that in a guilt-driven way. Of course, we're consuming resources,
Mm-hmm.
but how would we change our attitudes and our approaches to that if over time we just became way more involved in those processes and supported the right ways even more? And we can do that, but it starts with regarding it kind of every time.
And that way to me sounds a lot more fun.
Yeah.
To bring up your word. Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. Thank you for that wisdom, and thank you for the time today. I mean, it's really been a real pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
The book, where can people buy the hog book and the turkey book?
At thewildbooks.com.
Wildbooks.com.
We're self-distributed.
Nice.
Right here out of Austin, and you can get both of those plus all the good merch, hats and so forth.
Very cool.
From thewildbooks.com. And there's a couple places in town. Archery Country carries it. Dai Due, the restaurant, carries it. You can get it on the Meat Eater site as well. They're one of our biggest wholesale clients.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jesse. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.